Hey guys, it's Editing Giles here. I'm currently back in Giles and Claire headquarters working on our next season, and we've just dropped our U2 bonus episode on our Patreon page. In it, I hear from a minister and U2 superfan, Reverend Tim Edworthy, who talks us through his 40-year fandom with the greatest Christian rock band that never was. I'm also joined by the host of the RE podcast, Louisa Jane Smith, who loves the band so much she actually did her dissertation on them. Here's a clip. Hello and welcome to God in Film, the podcast where a Christian and an atheist dive into the best that cinema has to offer and see if we can find any parallels with the gospel or any other Bible stories. I'm dressing like your sister and living like a tart, Giles Goff.
I'm Louisa Jane Smith, podcaster and educator, and if you walk away, walk away, walk away, walk away, walk away, I will follow.
And today for our very special bonus episode, we'll be doing something a bit out of the ordinary. Building on the success of our God in Music episode and our God in Swift episode, we'll be looking at the faith parallels in the music of U2. So, Louisa, what do U2 mean to you?
That's not easy to say. That could be a tongue twister. I think I have a tendency to get a bit obsessed with bands. And so if I decide I like them, I have to listen to everything, all the B-sides, all the bootlegs. And I think U2 was probably the first band that I really did that with.
Yeah.
I was brought up in a family where I wasn't allowed to listen to a lot of music. And so when I went to university and discovered music for myself, it was quite exciting to the point where I got so obsessed that I wrote my dissertation for my theology degree.
What, this old thing right here?
That thing that you have there.
Listeners, for those that you can't see,
Oh
I am
my
holding up
gosh.
Louisa Jane Smith's dissertation on U2. I still haven't found what I'm looking for. Unfortunately, Lou, you posted it to me. Bless her, she posted it to me with some little Haribo sweets in as well. It was adorable. But they weren't that delicate with it. So
No.
the ring binder got a little bit scrunched up.
No.
So...
It was broken to start with.
Okay.
I'm slightly laughing at the 1990s font.
I love it. I love it. I wouldn't change a damn thing.
So yeah, so U2 hold a very, very special place in my heart.
Fantastic. Now, this is one of those shows where we switch up the format a little bit, and instead of me talking for ages, I shut up and listen for a change. Some of you might think that's a good idea, and to you I say, Mum, shut up. So today we've got someone who is an absolute expert on the faith parallels in U2. And let me introduce himself.
Thank you. My name is Tim Edworthy. I happen to be a Baptist minister for my sins. Also, I flippantly call myself a retired building society manager, but that goes back over 30 years. So I am actually about a year, I think exactly a year and 3 months younger than Bono of U2. So you can see I'm sort of in the same age demographic. And I have been, I wouldn't say I'm an expert, but I'm certainly interested. And it's been 43 years now since I first got into U2. Yeah, it's been a long time.
Amazing. Thank you, Tim, for being on the podcast today. Like, you say you're not an expert, but part of the reason we started this show was you said that you've gone to conferences and given talks on the faith parallels in U2.
Yes, I mean, 6 years ago, back in 2018, I was due some sabbatical leave, something that Baptist ministers, many other clergy get about every 7 years. And at the start of the year, I was going to do something really worthy that would have sounded right. And then randomly, I came across something I'd never heard of before, which was something called the U2 conference.
Naturally.
And there is, in fact, a website called u2conference.com, which is well worth looking up.
Yeah.
And I thought I'd love to go to that. It happened to be in Belfast, so it was quite convenient to get to. And so off I headed in June 2018 to go to this conference. And basically, I mean, it was quite a quirky thing, hosted in and around Queen's University and Fitzroy Presbyterian Church, which is sort of in that general area of Belfast, with a variety of speakers. I would describe it as a conference for U2 nerds who are also academics, who were preparing papers and delivering them to each other. And then there were those of us who went along for the ride and had a great time, just sort of listening to all sorts of different things. Behind me on my bookshelf, there are a number of books which have come out of U2 conferences with various essays in them. Lou, maybe your dissertation should be in there somewhere. perhaps it is. Perhaps it is, and I've missed it. And if so, I apologise. But
Academic nerds are my
Yeah.
favorite kind of nerds. They'll say something incredibly arcane and obscure, and then they'll back it up with footnotes.
Yeah.
I need to confess something. I am something of a tourist when it comes to U2. I know their stuff. I like their stuff, but I don't know it like chapter and verse with the same frightening levels of detail, an analytical detail that I, for example, applied to the Taylor Swift episode. So I knew that if we were going to have like a U2 expert on, I needed somebody who could, if needs be, fact check him in real time. So, Louisa, that's why you're here, okay? So if anything gets through that doesn't sound quite right, that's your job.
Yeah.
So, Tim, what would you like to tell us about U2?
Oh, well, can I take you a little bit on my journey with U2? I mean, it's wavered in and out a bit, but 1981. I was a 19 going on 20-year-old Christian young person. And as with many brought up in the Christian faith, we're desperately looking for role models, particularly in the music world, that we could sort of cling on to and say, this person or this band are cool and they're Christians as well. And so it was around probably earlier in 1981 that there started to be a bit of a word going around about this new band called U2. So I had certainly heard of them, but not really heard any of their music. Maybe one or two tracks that had just sort of hit the airwaves. Then 1981, the August Bank Holiday weekend, as I'd started since I was 18, I was back at Greenbelt Festival. I think it was the Saturday night of that weekend. It was announced that there was going to be a very special appearance, an unplanned appearance at the concert by this up-and-coming Irish band U2. Goodness knows who else was on that night. But from what I remember of it, U2 rocked up. They were on possibly about 6 o'clock in the evening. They were on early, partly because I remember Bono standing on the stage saying, we were up in somewhere like Newcastle. It was in the northeast. We were up in Newcastle. We've got a gig there later on tonight. But we felt the Lord was telling us to come down to Greenbelt. And so that somehow contact was made. More recently, a few years ago, I happened across Bishop Graham Cray, who back in those days was just plain Reverend Graham Cray, but was the chair of the Greenbelt Committee. He told me he was the one who took the phone call saying that U2 could come. So I was quite proud of that, I think. And they came and they appeared. And I would say they blew the place away. They blew me away anyway. It's very, for once, instead of the often slightly naff Christian rock music that we got at Greenbelt.
Naff Christian rock music? What are you talking
Never.
about? Gosh, I have no idea what that's like.
Yeah, anyway, it was really good. And so that was the first time I saw U2. About a couple of years later, they were around my neck of the woods. Grew up in Lowestoft in Suffolk, and they were doing a gig in the Ipswich Gaumont Theatre. Managed to go there. Bono was sort of climbing up speaker stacks left, right, and centre, scaring any health and safety bods that were there, waving flags on Sunday Bloody Sunday, and all of that. And so again, very exciting. A year later, it was no longer just the sort of provincial theatres, but it was Wembley Arena that I saw them at. Didn't actually see them for a while after that until early 90s, 1993 at Wembley Stadium. And obviously in the meantime, they'd gone stratospheric. I think certainly through the Joshua Tree, the biggest band in the world at that time, and stayed that way for a while. And then I've seen them a few more times in recent years. I mean, they're downsized a bit now to more to arenas and stadiums, I think. But then they can do more with it. The sort of technical stuff, the video stuff.
Not getting stuck in giant lemons this time anymore.
Well, indeed, yeah. I think one of the ones I went to, it would have been Wembley when Bono was doing his, I think it was his Mephisto era, phoning up various people. So the night I was there, he was trying for Prince Charles at Buckingham Palace. Didn't get very far with that particular one, but the line went dead.
I feel like my U2 origin story was much less interesting. I don't know if you noticed, I'm a little bit younger than you guys. In 1981, I was -2. So I might have missed a lot of that stuff going on there
Yeah,
in lieu of Thomas the Tank Engine. So for me, the first time U2 kind of turned up on my radar was when Batman Forever came out, and they were on the soundtrack to that with Hold Me, Thrill Me, Kiss Me, Kill Me,
yeah.
which still slaps to this day. And the fact that they had like a cartoon Bono and a cartoon Batman in the music video is still the thing that sticks with me, really.
Yeah, and actually, I don't think most U2 fans would rate that particular song very highly. I mean, it's okay for that kind of genre of film, isn't it?
From what I understand, the mid 90s is a little bit of a awkward period for them. Like we're into the sort of disco pop kind of time, and
Yeah,
they still feel like they're kind of trying to find their feet, trying to work out who they are. Am I reading that right?
yeah, they were trying to rediscover themselves somewhat, I think. And to be honest, probably after Achtung Baby, when they moved on to sort of Zooropa and pop, they lost me a bit. And
Mm.
I mean, I bought the albums,
Yeah,
and
obviously.
got them
We all
either,
buy the bad albums. I've
well, of
got
course,
Tortured
I mean,
Poets Department by Taylor Swift over here.
well, there you go. So, but yeah, I think they were rediscovering themselves, and even when you go from the Joshua Tree onto Achtung Baby, I think somebody said that Achtung Baby is the sound of U2 chopping down the Joshua Tree. It was quite different,
It's a nice analogy.
but it was even more different, I think, after the Joshua Tree when they moved on to Zeropa and Pop.
Mm.
In some ways, again, like a lot of people of my age, who were brought up in the Christian faith, U2 became something of the soundtrack to my life,
Mhm.
and probably helped me explore the Christian faith more deeply through the lyrics. And there's always this thing, I think, whenever U2 brings out a new album, well, whenever, I hope they will bring out a new album. It's been 7 years since the last studio album, but those who are of a sort of religious disposition will be poring over the lyrics and seeing where are the God references, where are the Jesus references, however tenuous they are, and very often they're not that tenuous, but seeing how that, what that's saying about, well, Bono's faith in particular, but maybe other members of the band too.
Do you think it's fair to say you listen to sort of like Boy or War, and it's this quite innocent, accepting faith, isn't it? About they just see the world through Christian eyes, and then I think they kind of lose their faith. I think through sort of Joshua Tree maybe onwards, they're kind of questioning that faith. Then they kind of
Mhm.
outright reject it, and it feels like in the sort of latter end of their career, they're kind of coming back to their faith, but with a little bit less naivety, I guess. They're just kind of going,
Yeah,
right,
yeah.
there's a real problem of evil moment in the middle where they're like, right, rubbish stuff keeps happening, and actually I can't keep playing this game.
Mhm. Yeah.
Almost like Brothers Karamazov type stuff. And I think
Mhm.
now they're kind of mellowing in their old age, and they're kind of going back to what they started with, which is this acceptance of faith that they have.
Yeah, it's interesting. I remember when a later Greenbelt, and it probably would, yeah, it would definitely be after the Joshua Tree had come out, but not long after. There was a guy who was a bit of a hero of Greenbelt, called John Smith, who was an Australian pastor and a biker, and so
Mhm.
he took issue really with Christians, probably evangelical Christians, who were taking issue with Bono, saying, how can he sing "I still haven't found what I'm looking for"? Hasn't he found
Yeah.
Jesus? How can he say he still hasn't found it? And John Smith at Greenbelt, on main stage, I think it was, he defended him really and said, well, which one of you here can really say that you've found everything that you're looking for?
Mm.
And I mean, that's spoken to me quite powerfully over the years. We don't have to have everything sorted in our lives to be followers of Christ. It seems to me that most followers of Christ, when you read through the Bible, were pretty imperfect followers.
It has been my experience that Christians seem to be uniquely placed for being horrendously bad at any kind of cultural criticism,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
films or music. That you feel like they would be more comfortable getting the kindling out to sort of set somebody on fire rather than to properly
Mm,
appraise an album and say, well, what are they trying to say here? What do you think they're reaching for?
yeah,
It's
yeah,
such a difficult needle to thread, the idea of being Christian and a pop star, or even Christian and a celebrity, because
yeah,
we want our rock stars to be edgy and exciting and to push things
yeah,
forward and to be rebellious and the rest of it. Whereas for Christianity, we want somebody to be pure and upstanding and noble and sticking to and consistent, and those things just don't mesh very well. So whenever you hear anything like Christian rock star, you can kind of feel your teeth on edge already. It's
yeah.
it's such a difficult one to do. So anyway, let's
Yeah.
get into it. The faith parallels within the lyrics. What song would you like to start us off with?
I'll start off with one which I think is often misinterpreted, and an early one,
Hmm.
which is "I Will Follow," and it again, that refers to that, does go back to that primitive time where the music was quite basic, wasn't it? And,
Mm,
and the thoughts were quite basic. And I think a lot of Christians have picked this up as a kind of God song, and it can be that, and it's got references within it. But at its heart, it's really a song about Bono's yearning for his mum, who
mm,
who died tragically. The story goes that at the funeral of his granddad in 1974, it was, his mum actually suffered a brain aneurysm, of which she died 2 days later. And imagine the
Oh,
trauma of that.
the double whammy.
Exactly. You lose your granddad who you love, you lose your mum who you probably love even more because, she's the one who gave birth to you and all of that. And there's a lot in U2's music and Bono's lyrics that kind of go back to his mum. And, he's imagining her in that. If you walk away, I will follow, and your eyes make a circle, and all of that. But at the same time, you go to the lyrics, and there are signs of the Christian faith that Bono has been learning about through the Mount Temple school that he and the other band members were at and met through. There's something of a kind of Christian revival there, and also through the Shalom Fellowship that they were a part of in Dublin.
Mhm.
So you get him saying things, yeah, I will follow. I was on the outside when you said you needed me. I was looking at myself. I was blind. I could not see. There's a kind of take from the New Testament. Later
Mm,
on, it was "I was lost, I am found." There's another one. It comes back to that. But I just think that the song itself, is probably has channeled a lot of his angst, but
mm.
the tragedy that he's experienced. And only about 3 or 4 years after that, Larry Mullen lost his mum in a car accident. So there's two band members with similar
Yeah.
losses. I think that there's probably been anger because of that, but there's also been energy that has sort of transferred itself into their music. And I Will Follow actually comes across as quite a joyful song, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Despite the looking back.
I was just going to say, but it feels as though I Will Follow is subverting the kind of truth. You know what I mean? Because he's saying I was blind, I could not see. Rather
Yeah.
than the Bible saying I was blind, now I can see. So he
Yeah,
still
that's
see
true.
still seems to be in that like point of actually this is hard and this is challenging my faith and I can't quite
Mm,
find a way out
Yeah.
of it. But I'm just going to keep following just because I kind of hope that it's going to lead me out of this place. But I think when he's writing
Yeah.
this song, he's not quite at that acceptance of what was going on.
No, 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 probably not. I mean, there are a lot of songs in U2's canon really that sort of refer back to his mother. The obvious one is Iris, which comes a
Mm.
lot later.
Which is his mum's name for those.
Yeah, absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Sorry, not to do with his eyes or anything
Yeah.
like that.
mm,
Which
Which it also makes sense.
yeah, it would also make sense. But he talks, hold me close, don't let me go. And I mean, that's clearly is about his mum, but it could
mm,
also, I mean, that's with so many songs from bands which have some sort of Christian influence. How much is it about a person, the lyrics that they bring, but how much is it about kind of discrete reference to God?
Mm. But it then made it relevant to everybody, didn't it? So actually, if you
Yeah,
were
it did. I
religious,
mean,
you could read that
yeah,
into it. If you're not, you can have a
Mm.
secular, more, romantic kind of notion of it.
I mean that's the thing about lyrics and art generally, isn't it? It can mean
Mm,
what you want it to mean, what you
yeah.
see it, what you hear in it, and I think that can often be so of U2's lyrics as well. You know,
Mm.
it might be about God, but maybe it isn't. Maybe it
There's
was never
that line,
intended.
isn't there, in Iris, where it says, "We're meeting again," or "We'll meet up again." We're meeting up
Yeah.
again, something like that, which actually is what I was saying earlier, that they're kind of reverting back to that
Mm,
simple faith they had. Like, this is from Songs of Innocence, so much later on in their
yeah.
career than
Yeah.
um, I Will Follow.
Yeah. Yeah.
And and
Absolutely.
again, that could be about seeing his mum again. That could be about meeting his creator.
You talk about that. It sounds like their lives have gone through the basic plot structure of like Todorov's story. You know, you start off with
Mm,
equilibrium, you know, God is good and we love him, and then you get disequilibrium in the sense of, well, if that's the case, then what about this and that and all the rest of it? And then you come back to a slightly altered equilibrium where you still believe what you believed before, but you understand the complexities, you understand the knottiness of it. And
Mm,
I think that's a really important part of
mm,
anybody's Christian walk. I feel like if you haven't deconstructed your faith and sort of taken it apart, kicked the tires a bit, and worked out, well, what do I actually believe? What does it make sense to me? It feels like
mm.
you've had quite a shallow faith if you've never really spent any time questioning it. One thing I wanted to
Yeah.
ask, Bono, by virtue of being the singer and the, from what I can see, the predominant lyricist in it, we get
Mm.
a good sense of his faith and where he's at. Are they a Christian band? Are the others Christian or not so much?
I think from my perspective, I mean, Adam Clayton has probably never really got it, but maybe. I mean, there is stuff in Bonnet, what Bonnet's written in recent years, where he says that Adam's found his own path, and he's there. But he was always the one that pursued from the beginning. I think the hedonistic lifestyle, the rock star,
Hmm.
you know, usual thing. But I mean, Bono and Larry Mullen Jr. And also the Edge. I mean, they were all part of the Shalom Fellowship, and in the sort of early '80s. But there came a point when they were starting to get success, and the story goes that they were really challenged by the leaders of the church, going along the lines of, "Who are you going to choose? Are you going to choose God, or are you going to choose the world?"
Mm,
And the kind of implication of that was the success was the world, and so they had that sort of anguish. I think the Edge actually left the band for a very brief time, like a matter of days, but before coming back, and in the end, what they chose was to leave Shalom Fellowship. That they could still, I think, felt be Christians and pursue success,
mm,
pursue fame, which quite clearly came to them very quickly. Bono, who's always been the spokesperson, isn't it,
mm,
for the band? He's the one that they have tolerated whilst he's been going around the world with his kind of messiah complex and need to kind of save the world from AIDS and save the world from poverty and all sorts of other things, which is brilliant. So that as well, actually, I find a tremendous challenge personally. He's been into everything, probably still is.
You mentioned that Messiah complex because these guys seem to be people who at times have had like a sort of fairly terrible public reception, which I don't think they've necessarily
Mm.
deserved. That is it just that sense of people don't like the holier than now thing that they think they're perceiving, or is there more to it?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, I think there have been people that have hated the sort of pomposity, if you like,
Mm,
of the way they see Bono, the self-righteousness, perhaps. I mean, I think he's well aware of the contradictions in his own life. I
mhm,
mean, one of the songs I would think about would be "Acrobat." I must be an acrobat to talk like this and act like that. And
mm,
he sort of there's him, acknowledging that possibly his lifestyle hasn't lived up to the faith that he has spoken about. And I think he totally gets that. But I don't know. I think it's interesting what you were saying, Lou, about them sort of kind of rejecting it. And certainly there was a kind of up and down relationship, I think, with the faith through the 90s. I'm not sure that that Bono ever entirely lost it, but he does explore what faith means in his lyrics, doesn't he? And I think because he is expressing doubts, again, the evangelical Christian community in particular has had a go at him. How can you say this and that? But isn't it good to express doubts? Isn't it good to explore them? I kind of, there's a quote I've used in sermons so that I remember it, about doubt being the grain of sand in the oyster of faith.
Yeah.
If
you want to hear the full episode, you can go to www.patreon.com/God in Film podcast and sign up to our Bishop Waller Bridge tier. You can also check out our God in Gaming episode. We have longer, extended cuts of interviews and uncut episodes on there where you'll hear it first and in full. I hope you enjoy this little teaser.